Ég er 57 ára
Já.
og ég hef hafið tiltekt innra sem ytra.
Vá, það er löngu tímabært, Dóra.
Já.
Þú ert alveg í rusli, bara alveg eins og ég.
Já. Í þessu podcasti ætlum við samt að byrja bara á bókaskápunum.
Já, því að bókaskáparnir segja mikið um hann, ekki satt?
Jú. Bókaskápurinn er spegill sálar þinnar.
Ok. Dóra.
Já.
Nú þurfum við að tala ensku í þessum þætti. Af því að ég kom nefnilega ekki með bók. Ég kom með konu.
Þú komst með mann.
I didn't bring a book, I brought a lady. Yes. And obviously the question is going to be, will we need to throw her away? Or are we going to keep this woman?
Mew.
Mew. So the woman who is meowing is my good friend Anna Bloom, who is a healer and a medicine woman from an island
Já.
called Madeira. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you.
Finally.
Fun to be here.
Yeah. So I met Anna a few years ago, but she's been coming here for what, 4, 5
A few years.
Few years to work in Iceland and to work as a medicine woman and a healer. And Dora is curious to know, because I told her I was bringing you in, not a book. She wanted to know how you started on your path as a healer and a medicine woman.
Já.
Okay.
Tell us all!
Okay, first of all,
Yeah.
I just started bleeding. So
Okay.
all the blood that should be in my brain is now in my womb.
Okay.
So
Good to know.
be gentle with me.
Okay, we will. Oh my God.
I'm going to be a little bit slow.
For me and Dora, we're
And
like,
I
we
think
get like super shy when people
Yeah.
talk about their periods. We're from another generation.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I'm very curious. Tell me about it. Is it really the blood? Does it go from your brain to your womb?
How do you explain that?
Yeah.
Before you tell us how you went on this path to become a medicine woman.
Well, when you're bleeding, there's basically less blood available in your system because it is going out. And so we are not capable of operating in the same way as we would normally operate.
When did you start to listen into your body in this sense? Because I'm so...
And who taught you?
Yeah, and who taught you?
So I was in my late 20s and I had a skin condition, like I had a really big skin condition. And I stopped, I was recommended to stop taking the pill. It was basically, I went to an Ayurvedic doctor and she told me that my liver wasn't doing so good and she told me to get off the pill. And I got off the pill and there was like a lot of like weird things that happened in the first 6 months of doing basically the withdrawal from the hormones. And then within a year of time, I started to have my normal cycle. And feeling all the differences between the different times, because for us each week we can be completely different people when we are not on hormonal replacement pills.
So Dora and I, who are both like in our mid-50s,
Yeah.
can you imagine? It's just in the recent 10 years that I've been like with any conscience of my cycles and stuff like that. So,
And me not at all.
yeah. And I wish we had known, because like, you know, when I look back, I can just see how my temperament has been shaped by this and how much could have been prevented if I had known myself a little bit better. But back to you. Tell us how you went on the path to become a healer and a medicine
It's
woman.
actually kind of related to this topic because the reason why I started on the pill was because I had a lot of pain each time that I would bleed because I have endometriosis and I really had excruciating pain. And so when I stopped taking the pill, it took some time to get to the point that it was when I was a teenager and I started on the pill. But eventually the pain started again. And I had no understanding of what was happening, and there was no like gynecologist that would have an explanation for this. I literally had gynecologists saying, you know, it is what it is. Some women suffer with it, some women don't. There's no explanation for it. You know, you just drew the unlucky card on this one. And I'm like, okay, there must be something more to it. And at the time, I was living in Lisbon. I was renting a house on Airbnb. I had just came out of cooking school after having been in Porto studying art. So, you know, my life had like this weird pattern. And I was inquiring a lot about the direction of my life and whether like the main theme at the time for me was, you know, I keep jumping from one thing to the other, like following different interests and things that are apparently completely not related. And I had this question like, is this just who I am and I just have to accept that this is how my life is going to look like? I'm going to jump from one thing to the other. Or is it that I just haven't found the thing yet? Like this was the inquiry that I had at the time. And so I was doing Airbnb, I was coming out of cooking school, I was starting to connect with a restaurant to work there. I think I had already started working at the Food Temple in Lisbon. And I had these guests that were staying with me, and it was so interesting because it was a couple. They were both from the United States. They were both studying Chinese medicine. And their flight was canceled, and they came back to the house to check with me if I had another night available. And I was in the balcony putting out the laundry and starting to feel super sick because I was in so much pain. And like really I felt like I was fainting. I started having cold sweats and I felt like my legs were shaking. And so
I'm just going to pause. Endometriosis is legslímuflakk. Legslímuflakk sjúkdómur sem að hrjáir bara held ég 10% kvenna í heiminum, en það sjúkdómur sem hún að tala endometriosis, legslímuflakk. Okay, go on.
So they come back, I let them know what's going on. They asked me if I would like to receive acupuncture from them.
Wow.
And so they did a treatment on me, and it went from me being in my toilet throwing up and feeling super sick to on the same day going out at night with them, because I was just like in 2 or 3 hours I went from feeling like I was gonna die to feeling like new again.
Wow.
And they told me at the time that by the symptoms and the severity of the symptoms, it looked like I might have endometriosis, which no one had ever told me before up to that point, and that I should probably seek help on a regular basis. So they recommended that I would find a local Chinese medicine school to go and see and be seen as a client, as a patient.
Yeah.
And that's how I went into Chinese medicine school.
Wow. Well, in Lisbon.
In Lisbon, yeah. And
wow.
And after a few times of going there and hearing about it, like there was so much resonance, and also I really loved the way that I was cared for. And you know, as a child, I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't really like the way that science and like the scientifical method was for me so uncreative, and at least the way that it was presented to me when I was at school growing up, and the way that my teachers put it out to me. So I was actually in science and then changed to art because it's where I felt free. So when I went into Chinese medicine, it was like, whoa, you know, there's another approach to medicine that actually touches my heart and feels that is related to my beliefs. And I had already had a glimpse of that when I learned about Ayurveda, and I considered studying it, but there were no trainings in Portugal at the time. So when I found this, it's like suddenly I start questioning my entire life, and I start like feeling really inspired about it. And actually it was my boyfriend at the time that asked me, why don't you join the school? And I'm like, are you crazy? It's like a complete change in my life. Like it's insane. But actually like that idea stayed with me. And eventually I did. Eventually I joined Chinese medicine school, and then this was the moment where kind of everything starts to change and shift, because I joined Chinese medicine school. I start doing also a lot of self-development training. I also learned Reiki throughout this process. I also started to
Dora
learn
and I
light
have
language.
both learned Reiki.
Yeah.
We're
Reiki
very
1 and 2.
yes, we're very good at 1
Yeah.
and 2. Yes.
Okay.
I also go into the Mayan lineage of light language, which is not the light language.
The Mayan.
It's the Mayan curanderos lineage
Uh-huh.
from Mexico.
The,
Yeah, I
the
know
Mexican
that, yes.
healer lineage.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And it's a very specific lineage that has many courses. One of them is light language. And it's not the light language that now everyone speaks about with people speaking tongues and doing gestures and da-da-da. It's not that. It's the language of sacred geometry and light. So according to them, it is basically the language of creation. It's how everything that is matter is created through vibration, frequency, light, and sacred geometry. Which it's like the geometry, the shapes are kind of like what structures, what represents the structure of things, and then the light would be like the flavor, the like different nuances that you can give to the structure. And so
And how can I ask a little bit, because I never heard about this.
Yeah.
Dora
No.
is super interested about systems.
Yeah, I get like fascinated when you
Yes.
say this. How long did you stay with this light language theories? I mean, how deep did you go into this?
so I'm still studying it. It's an ongoing thing. You take it at the rhythm that you want, because basically any of the trainings in the course, you can do them whenever you want. It's not like it's not like a university degree, you know. There's like 200 different classes. You can take them when you feel ready to them, and you know, it's, you know, the teachers, so you can connect with the teachers to get the downloads basically. So I did level 1, 2, and 3 of light language. And if I wanted to become a teacher for it, I would need to do level 1, 2, and 3 again with a different teacher, and then do the teacher training. And I have started that process. So I have done level 1 and 2 for the second time. I still need to do level 3, and then I can do the teacher training, so that I can actually learn.
Okay, so from Chinese medicine to light language,
It,
not this one that
Not this
when
one.
people are channeling,
No.
you know, sound and movement.
no, it's way simpler. It's not simpler. It's completely different. But just for you to have an idea, like when I speak about something like pyramid, like the pyramid is a shape that we all know. If you think about how pyramid is used, like the shape itself, how is it used in the world? Can you give me an example?
Something about the stars.
Well, houses
Yeah.
are triangle shaped.
I mean, the most obvious is the pyramids of Egypt.
Pyramids of Egypt.
What are
yes.
they used for?
To keep
Storage for like like tools,
graveyards.
graveyards and
Preservation.
tools. Preservation, yes.
So that's the energy of the pyramid. We use pyramids to contain or preserve something. So for example, if you have a plant and your plant seems to be going through difficult times, of course you can water it and make sure that it's getting enough sunlight. But another thing that you can do is put it inside of a pyramid. It can be a physical pyramid, or it can be that you connect with the energy of pyramid and you emanate it to your plant. And if you use the color green, it's even better, because green is a color for healing and for growth.
I've seen light language grids that she does. So she uses these symbols, these different shapes, to make grids for periods of time, even for Iceland, for people. So just to see what's going on, and like to help people manifest stuff. And
I put it on my car that doesn't have a key, so it doesn't lock in Portugal. I put a red cube on the key so that no one gets in. I use it in traffic. Usually, I would use like a blue sphere and a red cylinder for fast and getting things going.
and at one point, I had lost something.
Yes.
And you said to me, don't you know how to find things that you've lost? And I said, no, I just either find them or I don't find them. And then you taught me something. And then the other day I lost something and I had forgotten how to find it. So will you tell us how to find things?
Yellow pyramid.
You put the thing you've lost.
So you
inside-
visualize the thing inside a yellow pyramid. And then you either follow your body or you follow whatever intuition comes to you about where it might be. You will also get an insight on whether you will be able to recover it or not, like whether it's lost or not. this is for objects. If it's for an animal or a person, you would instead use a torus ring, not a pyramid.
Okay, what's a torus
It's a
ring?
portal.
Oh, okay. A different shape
Yeah.
altogether.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Chinese medicine to light language,
Yeah.
and where did the journey take you next?
So next, when I was in Chinese medicine, I had a colleague who told me about going on a ayahuasca journey, and she was like fascinated about it and telling me all about it. Like, oh wow, that's interesting. You know, I want to know it. So I started looking for people that were doing ayahuasca ceremonies because I wanted to have a ceremony as well. And I think I looked for a year, and nothing happened. Like whenever I reached out to people, there was always like it just wasn't happening. It was all either the dates or there was something that just wasn't clicking, so it just didn't happen. And then at the end of that year, I think it was in the summer, it was close to my birthday. I was working at the Food Temple. I was already in Chinese medicine school, and there was this woman from Israel that showed up. She was selling a retreat, and it was a retreat like something like embody the goddess within you or something like that. And I had an ongoing theme of reconnecting with my feminine self. It was already also ongoing since I stopped the pill. I stopped the pill and I started reconnecting with me as a woman, and I started shedding this idea that I had that I didn't really relate with women, that I only relate well with men, because my friendships were mostly masculine, or when they were women they were also tomboys like me. And I was like, okay, it's time to become a woman, it's time to like just own that I came in a feminine body, and what's it about that. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go on this goddess retreat as a birthday gift to myself.
How old were you?
I don't know, I was like
20 something?
early 30s.
Early 30s.
Yeah, this was early 30s.
Oh
yeah.
my God, Dora and I would have puked if we had seen an ad like this when we were in our early 30s.
I would have gone,
But not told me.
but I wouldn't have told you.
Oh, okay, because I would have gone like, are you crazy, goddess, something, what now?
Yeah, this was early 30s.
Okay.
So I go on this retreat, and lo and behold, there's an ayahuasca ceremony happening in this retreat, and this is where I met my teachers.
Ah, okay.
So
Were they Portuguese or?
they are Portuguese.
Yeah.
They traveled to Mexico, Brazil, Peru, Argentina for like, I think something between 10 to, I don't think it's 20, I think it's less than 20 years, but something between 10 to 20 years. They were traveling between Portugal and South America to receive teachings from different
Elders in different
yes.
Communities.
So they spend time with the Shipibo. They spend time with different teachers that I'm not going to name. No Hunikuin.
No,
just Shipibo. Yeah, from.
So this was so that ceremony was your first experience with
that was
with
my
plant medicine.
Yes, that was my first experience.
Because
with
you
plant medicine.
also have worked with plants.
And I had experience when I was younger with Santa Maria.
Which is weed or cannabis?
Is weed or cannabis, yeah. But these were recreational experiences, not like held in the best way possible. And they were not necessarily negative, but they were also not
not life-changing.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
But I also had a lot of negative experiences with around people that were abusing substances. So I had a lot of respect and a lot of I didn't really like to dabble with it too much. And there was also some stories in my family of people that had been negatively impacted. Like a friend of my mother had committed suicide when he was young, and supposedly he was doing drugs, and so there was this whole negative
thing that you had with you. You had like that knowledge.
So I had a lot of respect for it.
Yeah.
And even as a teenager, I tried a little bit with it, but always with careful and a little bit of fear. So that was my first proper experience with plant medicine, and it actually took me 1 year to integrate that one. We had 2 ceremonies in that retreat.
Yeah.
And And then I went home and I stayed home closed in my room for a month before I could come out again.
Wow,
After
it was
the
so.
ayahuasca ceremony.
Yes.
So it was so big and so transformative.
Yeah. So for me, the sensation that I had is I had been living in a room inside my mind with like the lights were off. Or, you know, I would only turn on the lights kind of like in a theater. You strategically choose where you put the lights on. And suddenly all the lights were on and I could see the mess that was in there. And I'm like, oh shit.
The
now I have to
the
start.
mess within
Yeah,
yourself.
the mess within my head. And it was like, okay, this is all that I still have to, you know, clean, organize, work on. So that was the feeling that I had after that ceremony. And I knew that my journey with it would continue, but I needed time to really integrate all of it. And so it was. So the year after, I went again on the same retreat, similar retreat with the same teachers, and had again another journey. It was a very different journey. And then that year was like one thing after the other. So the next retreat that I did was no longer with the Israeli woman holding the goddess, I don't know what retreat. It was a retreat with my teachers that would become my teachers. Kind of were already becoming, but not officially.
Yeah.
But this is when I started working with them and kind of being initiated to their lineage. And then that kind of accelerated into, you know, fast forward into the future. They start this training
And you joined them.
yeah, and I
As
joined.
they
And
started
so the
training
the training happened in this moment where I was opening up a healing center in Lisbon together with my friend Alice, who was the owner of the restaurant I had been working in. So we opened up this space in Lisbon that we called Bloom in Lisbon. And the intent, it's where my name comes from. So Bloom was created with the intention of, you know, what we were getting from the retreats. We felt like this is amazing. Like, why don't we live like that? Why don't we live in these kind of containers where there's intentionality in everything that we do, that there is prayer, that there is honor, that there is ceremony? We wanted to live like that, but then we had to go back to the city and live, you know, our normal 3D lives. So we wanted to create a space within the city where we could have like a safe harbor, where we could still continue the work, where we could still have ceremony, where we could still have the healing happening. So this was the intention for the space, and we it was a baby for us to when we created this project. And during the same time that we create the project, Kat and Marty are talking about creating this training. And it's called Medicine Women and the Guardians of the Earth. So it was both open for women and men, but the women are called Medicine Women, and for the men it's Guardians of the Earth. And it's supposedly a 3-year program that is weaving the different traditions that they received information from, and is teaching us about all sorts of things, but also taking us on a journey of self-discovery and exploration into ourselves.
So this journey with them.
This journey begins more or less when COVID begins as well, like during the
Okay.
pandemic.
Okay.
It's when the training more or less initiates. So there's a lot of like these timings that are very, very interesting. So the space that we opened went bankrupt.
Okay, wow.
We had to close it.
Well, COVID affected everybody,
Yeah.
right?
So we closed the space. I just got into my car and my caravan, moved out of the city into the forest. And that's when I started the training. And these were all also initiations, because there were vows that I did that I was basically offering myself to be in service. And when you do that, there is a humbling that happens afterwards. So basically after this, I was brought into the journey of losing everything I had. So I lost everything. I lost my house, I lost my business, I lost my other business. I literally lost everything I had. And I
Was
had
it cult-like?
What?
Well, like the training?
No. No, I was in my life.
Yes.
And we would meet once a week online.
Yeah.
And then once a year we
So
had
it
a
was not
retreat.
mandatory that you had to lose everything.
No.
No, I
no,
just
it's
like
just
life,
something like that.
just
No,
like
no.
life
Yeah.
brought that.
This
you
is
know.
like the
No, I didn't-
sacrificing the sacrifice.
Yes,
It's really
yes.
like going
I
through this
didn't
thing
I didn't
of-
create any of that.
No.
It
No,
was
no,
not
no.
intentionally.
No. It's
But
just
there
like
were- but-
unfolded like
Yeah,
that.
but there were vows that I
Yeah.
did. Like at the time I was also working still with light language. I created my graduation light language grid, which had the title Ana Quintino radical self-love. Like it couldn't just be self-love. No, it had to be radical self-love.
Yeah.
So, and that was kind of, I went through a process of undoing, because when you tell spirit, when you tell the universe, when you tell your subconscious and your higher self that you are opening up to radically love yourself, first you need to know yourself. Knowing yourself means that you're going to be faced and you're going to see and you're going to know everything that you hate about yourself. So life provided for all the situations and circumstances for me to confront that.
Who you were if you lost everything.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
who I was in all the possible craziest, difficult situations that could come my way. And so it was my undoing as the person that I thought I was.
Can you talk more about this losing everything? Because I think it's what is the most scary thing for everybody is like,
Yeah.
what if I lose everything? This is why we hold on to things.
Yeah.
Can you a little bit talk about this losing everything?
Well, there was a lot of grief through the process, because it's not like I lost everything in one go. It was really, I was trying to hold on to things, and the more I hold on to them, the more they just slipped out of my hands. Until I understood that actually what I really need to do is just let go of everything. And what I learned from that process was I have me. And what I am is something that took a long time to build and to create, and that is not something that anyone or nothing can take away from me. And for as long as I have me, I can pick up myself again, and I can rebuild myself, and I can reinvent myself. So this is what I found at the end of that. But the process itself, again, it was like it was associated with a relationship that was very giving, but also very toxic. So it was like a very charged relationship. That we dreamed very, very high, and we thought we would create this empire for ourselves. So we also went really high in our dreams and aspirations, but we didn't really have the foundation or the resources to make it happen. So it really went from making a big leap of faith together with a person, and then again witnessing the undoing of all of that. So my business in Lisbon failed. Like the two businesses that I had at the time, the Airbnb and Bloom, failed.
Your relationship went to shambles.
Well, my relationship still carried on because it had different moments of it.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, I moved into the middle of the woods. I met him there. Then I sold my house in Porto. We bought land in the center of Portugal. We were going to create a retreat center. Then COVID happens. Everything goes to shit. I already had like retreats lined up and all of that. Everything blew away. And this was like one thing after the other. And it was also how, like, one of the things that I also understood is that I was not following my inner authority, because after Bloom died, I needed time to recover from that. And instead of waiting and staying still, I was like, no, I'm gonna, continue to push forward and make something else. And
So
he was
where
also
does
pressuring
one
me to
go
that.
from nothing?
Everywhere. So it's not completely done. I would say the last morsel of giving up on having things was actually just before I came to Iceland this time, when I had been flirting with the idea of renting a house, because I had a house in Portugal, and I was about to move all of the things that I had in that house to another house to still hold on to something that is mine. And at some point I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm doing it again. I'm again trying to create a false sense of stability with something that actually, if I really look at it, it's not the right timing, it's not convenient, it's not something that I can clearly state that I can hold and that I want to hold. Because what I really want to do is to be open for life to surprise me and to take me on adventures. So then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to rent any house. I'm just going to be homeless for a while and see how that feels. And I had been so anxious just months before about not having a home and not knowing where I'm going to live and where home is and da 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 da. But the moment that I decided, actually, I'm going to let go of the idea of renting the house, suddenly I felt amazing and free. And it's like, I can, like, where do you go? You can go anywhere. Who you're going to be, you can be anyone. What are you going to do? Whatever you want.
Wow, the box just like fell off
Yeah, it just like
the
opens.
condition.
Yeah, that's like deconditioning to an extreme.
But again, you can only reach that point when you have worked on your inner foundations. That you know that you have that you are resourced within to handle whatever comes your way. And I am, because I've have faced so much that it's like I'm not calling in more undoing.
What if I put
good on
you
that.
like in an ice cold bath? How long can you stay there? Can you survive?
Why would I do that to myself?
No, I would just like to see how you can endure that, because you've.
But
Well,
I'm very practical.
depends on
Now,
circumstances.
Anna, what did you do with your things?
I gave a lot of things away. I sold a lot of things, and whatever I still have left is stored in my parents' house, in the container in my parents' house.
Okay.
En ég búin að fatta eitt, að ef maður á bara marga litla reikninga, þá getur maður átt marga litla drauma, þú veist.
Já.
Já, þú veist, ferðalagasjóðurinn.
Einmitt, sumarbústaðasjóðurinn, barnasjóðurinn.
Nýsófasjóðurinn, skilju.
Til dæmis, já, og frábær kaffivélsjóðurinn.
Nákvæmlega. Og þetta kendi Íslandsbanki mér.
So you work around the world and you do medicine retreats, and one day Dora and I will bring a group of Icelanders to Portugal to do medicine work with you where it's legal.
Yeah, I've been hearing about this already.
I know. Well, just, embrace yourself. We will find time to do that someday soon.
I already had the Icelanders coming to Portugal to do a
Yes,
retreat
I
with me.
know. Well, I for one.
Yeah, you were one.
I for one. I've
But I
told about.
had another couple coming. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But you have been working here with Icelandic clients, and you kind of stopped doing. Well, you're mostly into mushrooms, working with mushrooms,
Yeah,
and not
in
plant-
Portugal.
In Portugal,
Yeah,
yes.
in Portugal I work mostly with
But
mushrooms.
here in Iceland, you work with people, you do body work, and you do interviews, and you do a lot of somatic work and somatic teachings. And I know you have repeat clients, and I know a lot of people that, well, I for one have loved the work you've done with me. I wish I could have you working on me every day. I would be perfect if Anna would work,
Yeah.
and you would be perfect if we
We
could
would
just
be calm.
but like the path from plants to mushrooms. Yeah, tell us a little bit how that came about.
So I began my journey with ayahuasca. There were some things at some point that were revealed to me during some journeys with ayahuasca, which it was very interesting because I did the whole training of the medicine women. It was actually the first time that I did something for myself, because all the studies that I have done before for healing was with the intention of healing others, of adding to my toolbox in order to help other people. And I reached the point where, you know what? The fact that I really want to help other people is because I have wounds in myself and I understand the importance of healing. So I'm just going to try to but support myself.
Yeah.
So actually that training was for me. And we went into work with different plants. So we worked with ayahuasca, we worked with Washuma or San Pedro, which is a mescaline. We worked with Santa Maria, we worked with cacao, we worked with mushrooms.
Tobacco?
Also tobacco, yeah. We also, and Sananga. So we work with all these medicines. And Hape. There was something about the mushrooms. They were not necessarily easier for me. It was a really hard, not the first encounter, but some of the ceremonies I did with mushrooms were really hard. But they also felt somehow more important, the teachings that I received from them. I don't want to dishonor other medicines.
Of course not.
But for me, there was a point with ayahuasca that she literally invited me to work with her, but then she said, you need to know these are the consequences of that. And I literally saw the devastation of the Amazon forest. Like I saw a vision of that. How through the movement of taking those medicines away from their place of origin and bringing them to the Western world in a way that is not necessarily in harmony and in balance, is creating destruction and the dishonor of, you know, the sacred lands and the sacred plants there. So she showed me that, you know, and I've never been there, so I couldn't have made this up.
Oh, I see.
But she revealed it to me.
But this is a shared opinion by many healers in the world now, that the let's say like the luster for ayahuasca is creating a problem in the Amazon, as it's being over harvested. The two plants that are needed to create ayahuasca, they are in danger now because of the, you know, the craving in Westerners for the medicine.
And there's more things about it, because it's again, it's a location specific medicine that I feel makes a lot of sense there. That the way that it's held there makes a lot of sense for the people that grow up to that culture, but for Western people it might not necessarily be the best fit. And I say all of these having been a Westerner that was exposed to the medicine and who got great benefit from it. So I totally understand that it is working to some extension, but I did receive a clear information from her, like this is.
And
the
when
cost.
plants talk to you, you listen.
And then I still sat with her a couple of times after that, but there was one ceremony that for me was like graduation. That was for me the ceremony where I graduated from ayahuasca, and it was the most beautiful ceremony. I was in tears the whole time. I was moved to tears the whole time, and I could really feel that, you know, I am love, everything is love. That's all there is.
Yeah.
And after that, I never felt the need to sit with her again. And it's not that I don't have a deep love and appreciation for her. It's really that I feel I'm done. I don't need to continue to pour, you know, to take from that resource, because I get it. I have it. With the mushrooms, it's a different story.
They grow everywhere.
Mushrooms grow everywhere. For me, mushrooms are also older than plants. Therefore, for me, they carry more information. I feel there are certain plants that have specific directions. For me, ayahuasca goes very much into the underworld. Washuma, and like mescaline in general, for me goes spatial, goes to the outer space.
Astral field.
Yes, it goes up. It has a vertical direction. Mushrooms go everywhere. They're like bad girls.
Yeah.
They go everywhere. They go sideways, they go interdimensional, they go down, they go up. It's really, it's like, it's a negotiation between the intention that you bring into them and whatever they want to do with you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the difference between cats and dogs.
Yeah.
Mushrooms are the cats.
Yes. Yes.
They just do what they want. You gotta respect that, you know, you gotta love that. So I really feel like once I found mushrooms, I really feel actually I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
Like this is it. They also returned me to something that I had lost, like, you know, like how serious I can be. So seriousness for me is a big shadow. And it's a shadow that I developed because growing up being very tiny and cute, no one respected me. So I had to become very serious in order to receive respect from people.
Yeah, she was very serious when I got to know her 3 years ago. I was like, Anna, can we laugh a little?
Yeah.
No, I like serious conversation. No, seriously, can we laugh a little? But
I like deep, not necessarily serious.
Yes, I know.
We can be deep and playful.
Yeah.
So, so the mushrooms for me, they really brought me to that giddiness and that joyfulness and that playfulness and like the cosmic humor that being on this planet is, because it is a cosmic joke.
Yeah, it is my
And it's so funny. It's so hilarious.
life.
Exactly. And
Life.
you know, and the way that the mind works and the way that we get caught up in this, that we take ourselves so seriously, that we take life so serious. It's hilarious. And they brought me back to this understanding of things, and this is also why I love to play with them.
Dóra, sjáðu,
Hvað?
sjáðu.
Já, sjáðu.
langflottasta gleraugnabúðin.
Já.
You have been working with Icelandic clients
Yes.
You've been coming here for many years, and and obviously the people that come to you are people that are open to alternative healing,
Yeah.
and people who have come to maybe an end where where like regular medicine or what's being offered is not doing its job. And I was just thinking, not because I know you don't share any personal story, but is there anything special that you pick up about the Icelandic psyche?
Yes.
What's wrong with us?
So first of all,
Or not wrong, what are we dealing with here?
yeah, I wouldn't like to speak in terms of what's wrong.
Of course.
There are patterns that I find very interesting that happen here, and I think it's also very much related with culture and weather. And history, the history of the country. I think it carries a lot of that. But so the first thing that I would like to just say before that is I don't really like to call myself a healer anymore.
Okay.
I am someone that is supporting the development of consciousness and supporting humans in stepping into their sovereignty so that they are choosing for themselves and not relinquish their authority to governments and states, but also that they understand that they are creators, that they are God-like. And by that I don't mean that each individual one of us is the God, but we are all sons of God, and therefore we carry the creative spark within us. And we are already creating our reality as we go, but for as long as we're doing it from an unconscious place, what we are creating is not necessarily what we would prefer. So what I'm
Or what
supporting-
is good for us.
or what is good for us. So what I'm supporting is making life wonderful for everyone. Because I really believe that it can be wonderful
Yeah.
if we stop resisting it and if we stop wanting it to be different than what it is, and if we just allow, or if we stop trying to be something to please others and instead we try to just be ourselves and then create a life that is serving that and not the other way around. So this is what I'm supporting people with. And some of the things that I have observed
I will never
here,
call you a healer again.
Okay, thank
Or
you.
you can slap me.
I'm glad that we established that.
Yeah, good.
Also, I don't do the healing. I support people.
Yeah,
in,
well, people heal themselves.
exactly.
Yes.
So I'm just there
To
holding
guide.
space and to witness them in that
Yeah.
process, and it's a really big honor. It has been a really big honor to be given the trust to do that here.
Yeah.
There are very interesting things that I discover in Iceland. One of them is I have never known of people a people that so generally has such a open third eye.
Yeah.
Like people in Iceland are so psychic, like crazy psychic, and at the same time doubts it so much
Yeah, I know.
and has the fear of insanity because of that.
Uh-huh.
And it's so interesting how most people have a third eye opened and they want to connect more with their intuition and with those abilities, but they have the fear of what will others think of them if they do.
So explain to our listeners, who might have their third eye open and not know what to do with it. Explain to them how that feels, how you observe that in others, and what if you've just discovered that you have, this strange antenna and that you feel and sense things around you. Because I agree, a lot of Icelanders are that way, and it's strangely part of our culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though it's like not up there.
It's kind of like, believing in elves and believing in all these
Tröll,
Exactly.
trolls and what,
but
yeah.
like
And the energies that
Energies.
we have.
you don't really believe in them, but you know that they exist, and so you have great respect for it, but you don't really want to step into the field of actually interacting and working with them. So it's like there is this constant flirting with energy without really going into or owning up to it, which is interesting to observe, but at the same time it kind of feels like you're missing out on something.
So tell our listeners a little bit about the third eye. What it feels when it's open. What to do with it.
Well-
what to not. you know, how to make sure that you don't think you're going insane.
Basically, you will know things that you're not supposed to know, or you will see things that you're not supposed to see, or hear things that you're not supposed to hear. And it can be in different ways. It's because each person has a way in which their psychic abilities work. Again, some people see things, I don't see things. Some people hear things, I don't hear things. Some people know things, like this is more how I work, like knowledge comes to me like a boom, like a download. And I also sense with my, it's almost like the same way that I can touch you, I can feel fields.
Yeah, energy fields.
Energy fields. And I can
Can you
perceive.
explain energy fields for our listeners? What is an energy field? I mean, you walk into a room and you can feel.
Okay,
Yeah.
but this is very complex. I'm going to try to
Okay.
make it very simple, but imagine that you have your physical body.
Yeah.
Yeah, your physical body doesn't end where your skin ends, because your heart, it's not only pumping blood, it's creating a vibration that is actually creating an electromagnetic field around you. That field is going to be kind of like a donut shaped field, and it can extend depending on whether you are open or closed, in resistance or, you know, relaxed. It can extend quite a lot, or it can contract more. So, but let's imagine that when we're in our normal state, we're going to have like 2 meters of a field around us. So whenever you get close enough to a person, as in 4 meters, you are in their field. They're in your field. You're creating another field. And when there's a group of people in a space, the fields come together to create another field.
Okay.
So it's like we're all having energetic sex at that point.
Yes.
We're all mixed.
Yes.
It's like a soup.
Yeah. You're not you anymore.
Exactly.
You are you and you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you know about the human design and the circuitry.
Yes.
So it's kind of like that, but
Yeah.
it's beyond that.
Yeah.
So because then you create a field and you're all kind of like in this soup together. And so there are groups of people that when I'm there, I feel like I need to get out of here. I just can't handle the intensity of it.
And you can also pick up information from people.
I can pick up information, yeah.
From people's
But
field.
the way that I pick up emotional information.
Yeah.
That's how I operate. Other people will pick up different things. Like, for example, some people, when they pick up information about past lives and stuff like that. Like, for me, it's never as clear as that. What I can pick up is on emotions, and I can taste them, I can feel them. It's a bit weird. So, and everyone has their unique way of being psychic.
Yes.
And
by the way, everybody
and sometimes
is
they fear
psychic.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And often it's related, like people will fear the way in which they are psychic because they don't know what to do with it, because they weren't taught and they were actually brought up to fear it. So this is something that I find a lot here in Iceland, is this fear of their own magic, of their own light, of their own powers.
Dora, do you want to throw her away?
No.
No.
I'm not even going to ask the pendle about it.
No.
No. We will never throw you away, Anna. I really loved, because for you listeners, I mean, I've met Anna with Steina, and I know Anna through Steina, and I'm getting more and more to know her, and I really love it.
I know.
She is a treasure.
I know.
She has so much information.
I know, because it was so funny. We mustn't go over time. And I was like, Dora is going to want to sit here and talk all night. That's going to happen.
But we have to stop, because otherwise I have to edit.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So we rather next time you come, we talk to you again.
Okay.
We do it like that.
It's a good deal. Absolutely.
Thank you, Medicine Woman. Wow.
Thank you so much.
I think it's very inspiring.
Yes.
Light language. Pyramids.
Well, when we push stop,
Yes.
we will ask Anna to show you a light language grid.
Okay.
Super exciting.
Yeah.
Next time you might be able to see it as well.
Bye.